Hi, everyone. This is Ron and Nick with another edition of Ask Ron. We just finished recording, or we just finished broadcasting live our deal structuring session for all the deals we couldn't get to during the
4
virtual
hours
quick
of
start.
deals.
It was supposed to be, what, 2.5 hours?
Yeah.
All right, so the first question is from Mario in New York. When a tenant buyer is ready to cash you out, but at the end of the term, the value of the property increased astronomically, who should benefit, tenant buyer or myself, the investor?
Depends on how you wrote up the contract. If you sold it to them for X, you got to let them buy it at X. You can't just change the contract because the values went up. So in that case, the tenant buyer would gain the benefit.
All right, second question is, when I write up an agreement, do I give it to an attorney at that point to look over the agreement to make the proper adjustments, or should I give the attorney all the necessary agreements in advance?
You give the attorney all the necessary information and let your attorney close with your tenant buyer. That's why we have attorneys. You can send them my lease opt-in agreement that's on our Gold Club site and let him look it over. If he don't like it, he'll fix it. If he does like it, fine. But that's what I do, but it's up to him to do the closing. And back to the original question, you know, if you're concerned about the value going up fast, you can always make the purchase price the appraised value at the time that the buyer buys. But that tell you right now, that's going to be harder for the buyer to accept and harder for you to sell.
All right, Rick, who lives in Canada, what is the contract I use for subject to offer to purchase?
Same contract you use to purchase any other way. You just, if you're using my contract, which you can use, check with your attorney first. It says right in there, I think it's 1G that you're buying it subject to. One something, paragraph one something.
All right. Fernando Diaz from Connecticut. I have a seller financing deal. The owner has a tenant that did not pay for 6 months and moving in 3 months. The 4-bedroom, 2-bath Capes ARV is $200,000, and it needs $30,000 in repairs. The owner will sell for $170,000, $10,000 now, and $50,000 on 5-year note.
Yeah, I bet they will. So the owner wants $170,000 for a $200,000 house that needs $30,000 in repairs and is way behind on the rent. That's a really good deal for the owner. Certainly not for you. Why would you even want to mess with it? What's your exit strategy? Tell the owner, we need a whole lot better price than that. And you do. And then even then when you get a better price, let's say you get them down to $140,000. Now what? Okay, if it needs $30,000 in repairs, that means your only exit is a work for equity deal. So if it's worth $200,000 in excellent shape, what are you going to sell it for? Probably no more than, I don't know, $175,000 or so, as is, on a lease purchase. So you got to get a lot better deal than that from the seller.
All right, next question is from Alexander in Florida.
Okay.
I had a seller who said he was possibly interested in leasing the house to me, but was hesitant because he did not want to pay taxes on his earned income. How do taxes work for the seller if they choose to lease their house?
Okay. You're not going to affect the seller's tax bracket in any way, assuming they have a mortgage, because you're going to pay the seller rent, which he has to claim as income, but he gets to wash out the underlying debt. If all the interest he's paying underneath, he gets to deduct. So the seller's going to have a very, very small income. Plus, here's the cool part though. When the seller is not in the house anymore and he leases it to you, now he gets to depreciate the house, which will probably wipe out any income he gets from you between your rent and his underlying interest payment.
Or you could convince him to sell you the house.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just buy the house and the seller, the seller still have to claim the interest that you're paying the seller, but they wash out the interest underneath. This is not a tax issue for the seller.
All right, Randy from Massachusetts. If you own a house through owner financing and you have had multiple tenant buyers for that one house stretching the time frame out to 15 years, does a seller who sold to you ask why they haven't been paid off yet, as they were told it might take a few years to be paid off?
Well, first of all, I would not tell them that it might take a few years. That's called making promises you can't keep. And second of all, yeah, if you got a debt that's in somebody else's name, you're probably going to get a call somewhere down the line wondering why you haven't paid it off. So what? I mean, there's nothing they can do about it. That was the deal from the beginning, and that's why you're going to get a CYA letter and have an attorney close it for you. But, you know, if it really gets out of hand, you can always do something to help your tenant buyer get cashed out if it's a, you know, big deal to the seller. But remember, if you're buying it on a wraparound mortgage, the seller gets to claim or use that incoming payment to wash out the debt from a debt-to-income ratio. It still should not stop them from going qualify for another loan if they want to.
All right. And
Now it's on a wrap now. It's not on a subject to.
continue on this question. If you reach the end of the term, do you extend the terms with them at that time? Or have you ever had to give the house back if they don't extend the terms? Or do they usually extend the terms?
First of all, if in fact you reach the end of that term, the seller has two choices: to take the house back or extend the term. And now the second question: I have never given back a house in my life because there's too many ways to get the problem solved. If I see that balloon period coming up, I mean about a year out or so, we should contact the seller at that point and get an extension. But if they say no, then maybe we should work on getting our buyer qualified to get a loan. But I don't ever remember giving one back. There's just too many ways out of it.
All right.
Now remember one more thing.
Okay.
If you're buying the house, the way the seller might have, you know, you could force them to foreclose you out if they wanted to, if they had to, which is very expensive and very time consuming. So most sellers do not want to go through that. And don't worry, your name's not even in the foreclosure because your land trust owns the house and your land trust owes the debt. So, you know, that is a lever you always have on them if you own the house.
All right. Last question from Randy. With you being a former mechanic, when was the last time you fixed your own car and got your hands all greasy?
The day I sold my business. Not since. I don't even know what's under my hood. I think there's an engine under there, but I don't touch any of that stuff today. You know, I write checks. I'm not even sure how to check the oil on that thing.
All right. Dwayne from Virginia. When you're buying a property, are you asking them to make the payment directly to their mortgage company? Because it seems like it would be risky to make payments to the owner in case they don't make.
I'm not asking them, I'm telling them this is how we're going to do it, and they sign a little form at closing giving me permission to pay their lender direct. Now that's applicable if they don't have a lot of equity over and above what I owe them. Okay, if I owe them what they owe the bank, they don't have any choice. I'm paying the bank. But let's say I owe them, I don't know, $30,000 more than they owe the bank. Well, I'll leave it up to them. I don't care. I'll pay them direct. Because if they don't pay the bank, they're creating their own mess and violating their own contract. And before it's over, I'm going to wind up taking that $30,000 worth of equity away from them because besides it's their credit on that underlying loan, they don't make that payment. So that kind of thing you shouldn't worry about as long as they got something to lose.
All right. Dwayne continues on the other side. Surely you will get people who will not pay you or pay you on time, and you may have to evict them. So if you have, say, a $1,500 a month payment, how can you afford to make that one payment, let alone several if you had to make them?
Well, that's the kind of thinking that keeps people out of the business. Now, the smart thing to do would be to take some of that big front-end deposit and set it aside for things just like that. Because if you have to evict them, it's true, you will be skipping a payment or two where you're not collecting anything, or three, or whatever it takes. So what? It's called business. Think of all the businesses right now that have no income, but their expenses keep on going. Well, you should plan for that. You should assume that's going to happen. Somebody gives you 20 grand, why don't you put 5 of it aside, put it into an account just for emergencies like that. And then when they happen, you'll feel so proud of yourself because you're smart enough to do that while everybody else is blowing every dime they get. It's called reserves.
All right, and the final part of his question is, how is this program working since COVID-19 when lots of people may be out of work and spending their savings?
Well, we've been answering that all day long here while we've been going through deals. It's working better. It's working better. More motivated sellers, more motivated buyers. It's creating a scare in the minds of sellers. They're ready to get out, and more of them are answering their telephone because they're home right now. But even after we go back to work, we see big things coming in this business. And, you know, this thing is going to change everything, but it's going to change it for the better for real estate investors. and more people or less people will be able to qualify at the banks because the banks are changing the rules. I read an article the other day about Chase. You got to have a 700 credit score to get a loan at Chase right now, and I think they're only going up to, what did he say, 70%, I think I read. So they're making it tougher because they're afraid of how this is going to affect. But that's bank loans. We're not into bank loan business. We are the bank. We are the one collecting the money. We are the gatekeeper. We are the loan committee. So these folks come to us, they got money, we put them in on a lease purchase, or in Texas on owner financing, and I don't care what the banks do. So it's a beautiful place to be when you're in the middle, collecting for a change rather than just paying out. It's time to think like a bank and become a bank, using other people's money. That's it? Okay. All right. Well, that takes care of it for this week. Watch for your emails now because we got a lot of things going on. We got another summit coming up. It's a summer summit on 6, 7, and 8 of May, 6, 7, and 8. All new crew, nothing like we did last week. And then we got May the 11th. Watch for May the 11th. We got an all-day how I did it, with nothing but students on there telling you how they did what they've done. So got some good stuff coming up, so make sure you watch your email. By the way, both of those are free, absolutely free. All right, see you next week.